Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
Live from Las Vegas, it's time for you to be talking movies with America's most award-winning film critic, John Barbour.
You're being so gentle. I've heard you give reviews and you're so rough. You're saying.
How would you have evaluated your own work in some of the films that you did prior to The Longest Shot? I mean,
much better than you, my friend.
Our next guest is one of those rare talents who has something to say and can say it funny. He's a writer-performer on the new Laugh-In and one of the most popular, outspoken, and entertaining personalities on the local news here in Los Angeles. He's won a half a dozen Emmys as a film critic and host of his own shows. Let's welcome Mr. John Barbour, right over there.
Hi, this is John Barbour, and this is Talking Movies. And this is going to be the show that I'm absolutely going to treasure the most, because the man that I'm going to talk to, whose name is Stu Shostak, is a human being that I absolutely and totally treasure. And you're going to find out why in just a couple of minutes. In the meantime, Doug, how are you? And how long have you and your brother been in Texas since you lost your homes and your offices in the forest fires in California?
Hi, everyone. Hi, John. We've been here about 11 months now.
You've set up your business perfectly, but have you guys found a home that you love that you've moved into already?
That was a difficult task. We did the auction thing. We kept on getting bid out. We looked forever, but we finally did settle on a couple. And the one we didn't want to live in, we're actually going to be living in.
Well,
we got bid out of the other one.
Listen, eventually you found the one you wanted, and I hope it's half as good as the one that I just visited this last Saturday. When I did my fifth show, and probably my best show, with Stu Shostak. He's living high up in Fraser Park, about 90 miles north of Los Angeles, in these alpine mountains. I mean, it's beautiful. And you know that being old-fashioned show business, so I always would wear a suit and a tie. And in Stu's other 4 shows, I always wore a suit and a tie. But up there, I figured that I should wear something a little more comfortable. And so what I did is I put on this yellow top that was gifted to me by a lady lawyer, and I thought, well, when I go walking around in the trees, it's this color and they'll be able to find me. But then I thought about the fact that the other guest on my show, whom I've never met and I'm anxious to meet, is the person who made this phenomenal, successful documentary, sadly just called Stu Show. And it's a monster hit. It's just been released just now. It's a monster hit just out there. His name is C.J. Wallis, and he's from Vancouver, and I'm from Toronto. So I thought at first I was going to wear this as a compliment to him. But my wife said, no, you look so better in yellow with Stu, so please wear the yellow, and I'm going to wear the yellow. Now, a little bit about Stu. For 70 years in this business, I've earned a living. I've gained employment and lost employment by talking. But I may be at a little loss for words as I go on to say this. Stu not only saved my life, but as you will see from this fabulous documentary that C.J. Wallis made, he saved the life of his lover. Now, in my case, aside from my wife and my son, who I had late in life, my work indeed was my life. And for 10 years, when I first moved up here in Las Vegas, my webmaster was my closest friend also, because I didn't socialize much, being locked up like this in a computer room. And he built my website. And then about 6 years ago, he inherited $500,000 from a homosexual friend whom he tended until the guy died. Then he moved to Thailand, and then he moved down the Donald Trump rabbit hole. And when I declined to keep him company going down there, he decided, well, fuck John Barbour, I'm going to take his work with me. So he destroyed literally 40 years of my work and my life. Before my heart could break, I got a call the next day, and my heart was mended by Stu Shostak. Stu said, hey, do you still have those films and those videos? I said, yes. He said, well, you gather them up because we're going to rebuild your website. And that's indeed what he did. And when I was going through all these old films, I found even better material that he made sure was going to be seen by the rest of the people. I cannot thank that man enough. Not only is he a professional treasure and a legend in his own right, because he's the only human who archives fabulously television from the 50s to the 60s. And it's no wonder that Lucille Ball absolutely loved the man. And she spent the last dozen of her years working closely with Stu to save her work the way he saved my work. And what I'd like you to do right now, I haven't been a film critic for 49 years because, as I said to Neil Simon and Burt Reynolds, and when they called me and said, hey, John, you can't stop being a critic because who's going to tell the emperors of the movies that they're wearing no clothing? And I said, well, I just ran out of entertaining ways to say it's a piece of shit. But the truth is, when I love something, I get to share it. And I came out of retirement because Stu would have said, you know, if you didn't like it, you could say what you want. But fortunately for me and fortunately for you and the audience, I loved it. So could you do me a favor, Doug, and play that brief review that I ad-libbed for Stu on Saturday?
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have an actual, authentic, honest-to-goodness, professional movie critic with us to share his thoughts. He's seen it on the Stu Show documentary. He's won more awards as a film critic than anybody else out there. Please welcome back to this program, as I get to take camera 2 now, to review the film, Stu Show documentary, Mr. John Barbour.
This is the 5th time that I've driven from Las Vegas all the way here to California to be on Stu's show, because as that old song says, I'd walk a million miles for one of his smiles. But now, after 43 years, he has asked me to once again be a film critic. I quit after 10 years at Los Angeles Magazine and KNBC in Los Angeles in 1979, when I got my first Real People special on NBC. And when I announced my retirement, I got 2 immediate phone calls within minutes from 2 of the biggest stars in this business. Surprising calls, and they're surprising because I had absolutely trashed both of them, as you will see later in some of the reviews that we talk about. And both of them not only became big fans and big friends, they also wanted to be on my show. And those 2 were Neil Simon, the most successful playwright in history, and Burt Reynolds. And each one of them said the exact same thing. John, you cannot quit. Please don't quit, because who is going to tell the movie emperors that they're wearing no clothes? And I said, Neil and Bert, I must tell you very, very honestly, I've just run out of interesting and entertaining ways to say it's a piece of shit. But the truth of the matter is, I love it when I see something I love, because if I see something I love, I can share it. And that's getting rarer and rarer, until I saw Stu's documentary the other day, and I must tell you, I absolutely love it. It is probably the 3rd best documentary ever made about anyone in show business. Number 1 would have to be Searching for Sugar Man, Unbelievable. You must watch it. The greatest ever made. The second best was the one that I did on Showtime back in 1985, and it's called Ernie Kovac's Television's Original Genius. But the third best is sadly called Stu Shostak. I love the film, but I'm not fond of the title, because what is a Stu Shostak to those people who don't even know him? How are they going to be interested in something they don't even know about? What the film needs is a subtitle. I mean, my autobiography is called Your Mother's Not a Virgin. Well, what does that mean? So I stack on a subtitle, The Bumpy Life and Times of the Canadian Dropout Who Changed the Face of American Television, so then you get an idea of it. This needs a subtitle. Also, the promo, which is the first, it needs a second half, also sort of a subtitle. The first half showing Lucille Ball's love for Stu Shostak. And Stu's love for Lucy is absolutely fabulous because it introduces the word love. But then we are led to another true romantic love story about Stu Shostak and his girlfriend Janine. Now, he is forced to marry Janine, not because she's expecting, but because she's expecting to die. She has a brain aneurysm, and she's in the hospital. And Stu cannot get through to the doctors. The stuff that he needs done for the woman that he loves has to call a daughter. The daughter's not always available. He says, well, you know what? I'm going to marry her. And the scene in that hospital with her all wired up and stuff in her nose and her ears and her mouth is heartbreaking and heart-lifting. It'll bring tears to your eyes and you to your feet. But amazingly, when they get married and she's in the wheelchair, you think, where can this love story go? But what happens is that in his battles with the medical industry, it turns into one of the greatest public service films about the for-profit, corruptive, dreadful health system in this country. So on 3 levels, this deserves 3 to 5 stars on every level. And I would urge each and every one of you to watch this film. It is a wonderful, feel-good film.
Wow, you got me in tears. You realize that?
I would love to know, welcome to the show, my dearest, dearest friend, Stu Shostak. Stu, how are you and where are you?
I'm in Pine Mountain Club. We have to distinguish that from Fraser Park. You know the difference between Pacoima and Beverly Hills? Pine Mountain Club is Beverly Hills compared to Fraser Park, okay? I'm fine, John. I see you're still wearing the same wardrobe. I think that and the Canadian t-shirt are all that you own, I'm starting to think.
Well, actually, I have 46 suits that I still own from having done Real People and AM Los Angeles, and they still fit me. You know the only thing that's loose now after all these years? Skin. But
I was going to say, you've also still got 46 pending lawsuits from all your movie reviews.
But I got to tell you, now because of this wonderful film called Stu Show and not Stu Shostak, the whole world will not only know about what it is you do professionally, but what a heart you have personally. I have, even though I know a lot about you, I still have a bunch of questions I want to ask you. And I'm going to put you on hold a second because the world is going to know about you because A brilliant film has just been released, which is just going gangbusters now, made by somebody I never heard of. Doesn't have a name, he just has initials, and his name is C.J. Wallis. So, C.J., are you there?
I am, sir. Thank you for having us.
Okay, well, CJ, I have a bunch of questions to ask you. First, where are you? How are you? Are you married? Do you have children? When did you become interested in making films? And how long before your name became initials? Or were you baptized, CJ? So there you go. Where are you?
I'm by Hollywood Boulevard, which is equally as beautiful as Pine Mountain Club.
Impossible.
Yeah. The trees are equally as magnificent. And there's as many characters. Not married, no kids, film forever, and initials forever.
When you were a youngster, you were born where?
Vancouver.
Do you have siblings?
I do not.
When you were a youngster, which hockey team did you want to grow up and play for?
St. Louis Blues.
So you couldn't skate or you couldn't shoot, and so what led you to your interest in films, or was there another interest besides hockey?
Yeah, no, I played hockey to one level below NHL, but I'm 5'6", so that wasn't going to work.
My gosh, I'm only an inch taller than you. And you know that myself and the fella, the Swede that starred in Walking Tall, and he and I, and we started the celebrity hockey team, which is still going strong in Hollywood if you look around for it. Okay, so, and then there were a couple of very short hockey players who did extremely, extremely well. You got close being in the second level.
Definitely.
So when you were still in the second level, you must have had some kind of interest in films or television or movies.
Yeah, definitely. I was, I was watching shows like X-Files and Wonder Years and Lucy and all these things in a time when I wasn't doing hockey or homework. And it just slowly, there's something, maybe it's because I knew that everyone was looking for 6'3" goaltenders that I was just started to, see an exit, plan the exit strategy. I never like to have a plan B, but I also don't like to, commit career suicide or anything like that. So, just at a certain point, I realized that it would take so much work to become sort of a career goalie that just played in the juniors all the time. And I guess there's some ego that wanted to do something bigger or make more of an impact. And I can't really sing. So the other thing that's similar to that is making films. So here we are.
Well, the actor, by the way, was a guy named Bo Svensson, who was starred in a couple of Robert Redford films too. So there had to come a time when you started to do your first films or videos. What did you work on originally? And how long was it before you could do something well enough that you could earn a living at it?
I guess during school, my parents had a home video camera. So anytime there was a homework assignment that was like a big project, I would just, go around the corner and make some type of funny video. And then that always got me an A, even though it really didn't have much to do with whatever I was supposed to be making it on. It was just something that the teacher could laugh at. And then that sort of led to our video teacher. He did the school television show every week. So I showed enough initiative that he realized he could get paid for something that I would do for him for free, which led to working at a cable station, filming live hockey shows and weird call-in psychic line shows that I'm going to make a script about somehow one day. It was so just all these things, just finding any way to volunteer, as similar to Stu's story. Any set I could get on, work for free, and just get a free film school.
What do the initials CJ stand for?
Charles Christian. I don't know. You got to ask my mom. She decided
how do you
this.
get the word Christian out of J?
We're going to have Maggie Wallis on here to talk about that. I don't know. She
Okay,
said
now-
that she said when I went to elementary school that she thought it would be a cool name instead of Charles for whatever reason. And then I got there and there was DJ and TJ and all these other J's. So, and then people still sang the Charles in Charge theme song at me as some sort of insult. So nothing worked. It didn't matter.
Over your right shoulder is a picture. It's called The Perfect Bid. And Stu has told me it is absolutely one of the really magnificent documentaries that's out there and that I should watch it. And over your left shoulder, I see a picture under some flowers. So let's go to the picture under the flowers. Who's that?
I put that there in every interview. I'm so glad it's one of my favorite actors, if not my favorite actor, Sterling Hayden. There's
Honest to God?
Yeah, absolutely. I could watch
The Killing.
The Killing. That's just where I get started. Johnny Guitar, the movie where he throws the harpoon through people.
But he was never better than in Stanley Kubrick's film.
I sort of joke that I'm chasing Kubrick's ghost because ultimately that's who I idolize, and that idea of leaving together that sort of beautiful body of work. That's the whole intention of
He
the
was
goal.
by far the most original American director because absolutely every film that he makes looks different.
Absolutely. And that's what's so great. I just love that. I love artists and it's frustrating for, when you're trying to market something because everything's always to a different demographic, but those are the artists I love that do the exact opposite of whatever they did last time. And a guy that memorizes Price is Right prizes to someone like Stu is, So
now, okay, I just have one last thing to say about Sterling Hayden because
please,
I half a dozen times I will look at that clip from that film where he talks about the essence.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, it is so brilliant. And Kubrick had a great hand in writing it. As a matter of fact, Sterling almost steals some movie from Peter Sellers.
Absolutely.
With that single speech. So I'm glad I spotted that.
Me too.
Serendipity. Now, this one over your right shoulder, Perfect Bid. Tell us very quickly about why that and why you think it's so popular, because I understand it's an enormous hit.
Definitely. It's just, it was when I didn't have a lot of money, I just started producing films myself because I can do the editing and the animation and all that stuff. So there's no point paying 25 people and having to chase them. So I read about this story, Ted Slauson, who memorized every prize on The Price is Right for 35 years. And he would just go in the audience and yell out the correct prizes to people. And then Bob started recognizing him. And Bob's one of the greatest showmen of all time. So he started incorporating Ted and he became this sort of cult figure within the family of The Price is Right. And I said we didn't have a ton of money at the time, so I just put our life savings into flying Ted up, and we interviewed him for 3 hours, and we got Roger Dobkowitz, the 40-year producer of The Price is Right. I showed him a rough cut because obviously my intention was to impress him. I wanted him to like it very much, and he offered to be in it, and then he got Bob Barker involved, and then once you get those two people, it's
you seem to have an affinity for these offbeat personalities who yell out from the audience at the stage. And that sounds like Stu Shostak talking to Lucille Ball. Stu?
Yes, I'm glad you're comparing me to somebody who yells out of studio audiences. Thank you so much, John. Next time you're in front of a camera, in front of an audience, just be ready for me, okay?
Well, listen, that's how Lucy got to recognize you. So I have to ask you, do you have any siblings?
Yes, I have a brother and a sister.
Okay, what do your brother and your sister do?
They are as far away from show business as you can get. The last I heard, my brother was retiring from a job that he had in Minnesota for 20 or 30 years, working with an importer, clearing things through customs. My sister actually works with autistic children the way my daughter is now doing that. So they are totally removed from show business, had no interest in it at all. I was the only oddball in my family that for some reason wanted to be in this crazy, crazy business of
Well,
ours.
God bless your sister and your daughter for doing what it is they do, because my closest friend in second closest friend in Las Vegas now, John Haddad, his wife is Indian, Navajo Indian, and she got a PhD and she spends 12 hours a day, 6 days a week teaching autistic children. So bless them. Now, did you, unlike CJ, have any interest in anything other than television? Because it seems you became an instant addict.
No, I had no other interest. None at all. Anything that my parents forced me into, Dr. Phil, I had no interest in at all. Sports, forget it. I went to Hebrew school to get bar mitzvahed so my parents could throw a big party. So all of this stuff was thrown at me. I had to take karate lessons because they thought that would discipline me better. Obviously, that didn't work. Okay? No. I was a child of television from the moment I came out of the womb, and there was nothing that was going to change me. My grandfather tried to bribe me into becoming an attorney like my father is. Didn't work. I got money thrown at me by him, cars. I got apartments thrown. No. I wanted to be in show business. And because my family was so far removed from it, they didn't think that I would ever be able to make a living. And like you, John, at times they were right, but I was determined. And now here I am in Pine Mountain Club, the result of 40 years of working, 50 years now of working in television.
But you
take that for what it's worth.
Listen, like me, I often did audience warm-ups for sitcoms, okay? And you were excellent at doing that. So how come you never became the performer that you might have wanted to be?
Well, John, I mean, we know the answer to that. It's timing. It's timing and who you know. It helps to have a modicum of talent, but if you're not in the right place at the right time, you ain't going anywhere. What was your first big break? But you were a contestant on the Groucho show, right?
Yeah. But the thing that kept me going was my love for Jack Parr, the greatest late night talk show host ever. And then he opened his show with the most fabulous monologue. I can still remember some of his material. At one time, he said, I never vote because it only encourages them. I mean, it's so good. And I thought, oh my God, I didn't even know I could write a joke until I was 30. But you were always successful and you were always funny and you were always, I wouldn't call it pushy, but you were enthusiastic.
Aggressive.
No, you know what? Aggressiveness inclines pushiness. You were kind of adorable when you were pushy.
Well, ask some of the people in the medical industry whether I was adorable.
Well, that's what's so wonderful about your film. So now, what was it about Stu that you heard about that compelled you to make this magnificent and, I must say, needed documentary?
Oh, thank you. When we did The Perfect Bid, Mallory and I, my co-producer, we set up a bunch of screenings in LA. There's a few theaters around Hollywood here that'll show independent films. And Stu came out to one of those and he saw the movie, and Roger was there and Ted and everybody. And he invited us on to his show, which, as you know, you show up there, 8 hours early, and you go to the deli and you take his laundry to the thing and you know. So anyway, so we're at the, I saw that face.
This is new to me, CJ. Thank you so much.
So we go to the deli and Stu, we're catching up. So Stu starts to tell me the story, a little bit about Lucy and a little bit of what he went through. And, he told me a bit about Janine. I almost blew the ending of the movie, but, some of the events in the movie, the 10% of the story. And again, it's just, not being opportunistic, but it's just the whole reason I do this is for these reasons. It's like you meet these people and their stories deserve to be amplified. And I have the ability to do that. So as soon as he started, whether it was intentional, he was telling me this little pitch, or whether we were just the right, like you said, right time, right moment, it just was obvious.
Stu,
Yes.
When did you first, and how did you first meet Janine, and when did you start dating?
I was one of the co-producers of these Lucy conventions that we had in the LA area in the 1990s. After working for her for 10 years with a gentleman named Tom Watson, who was also the president of her fan club, who ended up becoming her publicist as a result of her admiration for him. We worked together on her last series, Life with Lucy, and we originally were going to do a Lucy convention while we were in production, but she sort of nixed that idea. She felt it was too self-serving, and then we said, well, you don't have to come to it. And then she said, well, you're throwing this big party celebrating my career, and she said, I'm kind of damned if I do and damned if I don't. If I don't come, I come off like a snob because I'm not going to my own party, and if I do come, it's like a self-serving ego trip. So we put that on hold until the 90s. Gary Morton was still alive when we did our first one, and he didn't want to come for the same reason. First of all, he thought it would be too painful because Lucy had passed about 6 or 7 years prior. To make a long story longer, one of the first people to send their money in for these conventions was this ultimate super Lucy fan who lived in Northern California named Janine Kaysen. Now, I was married to somebody else at the time, and I had just had my first child, so I didn't know that she existed at any of these conventions, and we did 6 of them. But she knew me because each year I would either do a panel discussion or host a game show or something. So I was always in front of the audience in some way, shape, or form. All right, the last convention we did was in 2001. Shortly after that, I got divorced.
Did knowing Janine have anything to do with the divorce?
No, I didn't know she existed.
Oh,
That's for
okay.
some of the reviews that have come out on the film are getting that wrong. We did not meet at the convention. I didn't know she was even there.
Okay.
What happened was I had turned 43 or 44, and my hair started to gray. It's nowhere near where it is now, but it started to gray, and I suddenly became unemployable as a warm-up guy in Hollywood. That's what happens. Now, I could have done the Jack Barry thing and dyed my hair, but I didn't want to do that. I just figured, look, I'm getting older. Just face facts. I was a single parent. I wasn't looking for any kind of relationship. It was kind of a painful and emotional divorce. And I had my video business at the time, which was editing demo reels for actors and transferring things to VHS and beta for clients. So I wasn't looking for it, but I did miss the audiences. I really wanted to do audience warm-ups again, but the problem is Hollywood has an ageism problem, which even though they don't want to admit it's there, when you get old and your hair gets gray, you're unemployable. And all of the producers that I had done warm-up work for were in their 50s when I was in my 40s, so they weren't working.
But you were still dateable. So when did you meet Janine, and how was the date?
I started an audio internet talk show in 2006. Because I missed audiences and I still wanted to keep the spirit of classic TV alive. One of the things that drove me nuts was these networks would come on like Nick at Night and TV Land, and they would embrace the subject long enough until the ratings started to drop, and then they'd start editing the shows and they'd start bringing in new shows so that their idea of classic TV was facts of life and home improvement, which drove me bananas. I mean, all of a sudden, Dick Van Dyke and All in the Family and I Love Lucy and The Honeymooners and Twilight Zone were shoved off to the side in favor of these 80s sitcoms like Growing Pains.
And Real People.
and real people. John, thank you for, it's your show. I can't really say anything. But in any case, I started this internet talk show to keep the spirit of classic TV alive. And I was able to get the friends that I had made doing audience warm-ups during those days to come and be on the show. Pat Harrington and Bonnie Franklin and Dwayne Hickman and Janet Waldo and all of these people that I had become friends with during my warm-up days came to help me boost the show and to get an audience. And my friend Mark Evanier, who has one of the most popular blogs on the internet, kept plugging the show so that I was able to build at that time a small but loyal audience. I had a lot of Lucy people on the show. I had Keith Thibodeau. I had Shirley Mitchell. I had Doris Singleton. All of these actors that to the mainstream public you may not know by name, but Lucy fans know who they are. And so there was a newsletter put out by the Jamestown Lucy Festival in New York, of which Janine was a member of, and they plugged my show. All right. So Janine started listening to my show, and she started calling in, asking questions of my guests. And I'm listening to her ask these questions, and it's like, my God, this woman asks questions like I would ask. She's not a carbuncle. She's not a crazed, deranged fan who lives in her parents' basement. This woman knows stuff.
So how did you arrange to meet for the first time, and what was the first date like? And how long did you date before she got sick?
I was reluctant because of my painful divorce, but I called her. I got her phone number. I emailed her. We talked on the phone for 4 hours, and on her dime, she came down to Southern California from Northern California, and we hit it off immediately. I mean, where was this woman my whole life? We had everything in common.
What did she do for a living?
She was a music teacher, professional music teacher. She had 40 or 50 students. She had a music studio inside of her house, the same way I had a video production room in my house.
What music did she teach?
Say again?
What music did she teach?
She taught piano. She taught guitar. She taught kids how to read music.
Oh,
she was,
wonderful.
Yeah, and she made a great living. She had a magnificent home in Petaluma. So she, it's like, where has this woman been my whole life? So we dated for 7 years. We weren't going to get married because she had been married twice, 2 failed marriages on her side, 1 failed marriage on my side. We already had kids. She had grandkids by that point. And there was no reason for us to get married. And so we were instant boyfriend, girlfriend for 7 years. And then she had the brain aneurysm.
Well, the interesting thing is I just interviewed Donna Mills, whom I urged to be on your show with Classic Television. And she's had her mate for 22 years and they never married. He has a separate house and she has a separate house.
We still have separate homes, even though
I must tell you, you have a gorgeous place, but hers is a museum.
I know. I always, when people come up here, I always have them come here first. And they're blown away by what I have. And CJ and Mal haven't been up here since we built the compound onto the house for this television studio in my workroom. They're coming up next week to do the show. But I always bring them here first, because if we take them to her house first, like you, they're blown away at her Hollywood memorabilia and stuff. And then they come over here and see my place and they go, well, gee, Stu, your place is nice too.
Her place is like a miniature San Simeon.
It is.
Red Room, she could charge admission. Now,
we have had so many requests from television. We've been doing, CJ and I have been doing nothing but interviews since the film came out. And the question that I always get is, when can we come up and see that Red Room? And of course, Janine, she's going crazy. I don't want camera crews coming into that room, treading dirt and mud and stuff. And so I'm dealing with that now too. So
I wouldn't want anybody in that house. It is just, it's spectacular. Now, what happened that eventually led to you proposing to her?
Well, she had the brain aneurysm. And
how did it happen? Tell me about the circumstances. Because I believe you were on the phone.
Right. She'd been complaining of headaches for over a week and she was being stubborn. And I said, let me take you to urgent care. Let's get your head x-rayed and see what's going. No. Because for years, the doctors kept telling her it was hormonal and they said it was migraines and they were giving her these pills that once they took effect, knocked the pain out. What we didn't know was they weren't migraines. And if they had done an MRI, they would have seen this pressure build up on her main blood vessel that sends blood from her heart to her head. And if they had just done that, it's partly her fault though for being so stubborn. And what happened was we were on the phone. Her headaches had gotten really bad and the pills weren't working, yet she insisted on coming up here and spending the weekend in her house. So I did drive her up reluctantly. And then I went back home and I talked to her every day. And she was saying these headaches are getting worse and worse and worse. And I begged her to let me come up there and take her home. And she said, no. And to make a long story short, because it's in the documentary, we were on the phone one day and she said, something's really wrong now. It's not just a headache. I'm feeling really weird. And I said, well, then call the paramedics. We pay more in property tax to Kern County than anybody else because we have a 24/7 EMT in the fire station here, which was the best thing we could do because we're in a kind of a remote area here. And I said, call the firemen and tell them to come over, get the paramedics to check you over. And if they find something wrong, they'll ambulance you out. And then, we can deal with this. And she said, no, I just call my neighbor and have her look in on me. I said, your neighbor's not a doctor. She's not an EMT. And we're arguing back and forth. And suddenly she stopped talking and I'm going, hello. And I know that we're still connected because I can hear the TV on in the background. So we hung up and I called the paramedics up here directly, which I was told later I shouldn't have done. I should have just dialed 911 in LA. But if I had done that, it would have taken them longer to get to the paramedics. I had the local number, so I called them, and it's this very small town up here. Everybody knows each other, and it's a wonderful place to live. And I didn't know the particular EMT that answered the phone, but I said, can you go over to Janine's house? Just make sure she's okay. She suddenly stopped talking to me. And they said, sure. They went right over. I mean, literally 5 minutes after this happened, they were there. But this is where the bureaucracy and the BS of the medical industry and the insurance company and all that started. I didn't know it at the time. Because we were not blood relatives, because we were not husband and wife, once they got over there and saw how serious this was, and they didn't ambulance her out, they had to airlift her out because it was a life and death situation. All of a sudden, I was persona non grata. They wouldn't tell me a thing because I was not related to her. And that little did I know at that point that's where all of this started and made me so damn angry about the way the healthcare system is run in this country. Yes, there are wonderful people. There are great doctors, great nurses, great people, but you got to cut through the bullshit and the crap to get to them sometime. And I knew none of this. I didn't know how to deal with idiots.
So now the only way that you can do that is to marry her.
Right. That's what I ended up doing.
Okay, so tell me when you made that decision, how you made the decision. Did you talk to the daughter first, or did you just go to the hospital? And how?
No. It was a long process. And again, it's all in CJ's wonderful film. She was in a coma for 6 weeks. And every single time they would tell me, because her family was either in Wisconsin or up in Northern California where she was living, I'd have to get a hold of them. They want to do this. They tell me what they'd have to do, but I couldn't give the okay because we weren't related. And her family was, getting really upset. I mean, they knew that I was dealing with this, full time. And they're saying, why do you keep calling us? Why? Just tell them to do it. I said, this is the other thing. I was her advance directive. I didn't know this, but the paperwork was there, and it didn't matter because these surgeries that she needed were so critical that the advance directive thing, it helped a little bit, but they still had to talk to her family.
Yeah, but she's in a coma. Doesn't she have to say, yes, I'll marry you?
No. Well, she came out of the coma. The minute she came out of the coma.
Just tell me how that happened, because in the movie, it is so moving. Oh my God, it is. So just tell me about it.
She came out of the coma, and the minute I could see that she was somewhat awake, I said, we have to get married. because you've still got surgeries ahead of you. I've still got bullshit I've got to deal with day in and day out with the insurance
That was
company.
hey, hold it. The bullshit line was part of your proposal?
Well, I might have said that. Look, John, this was incredibly stressful.
I'm sure
this was the most stressful thing that I've ever had to do in my entire life. And I was ill prepared for this. I knew nothing about social workers and case managers and how the bullshit work where you get these shitty doctors assigned to you that are part of a team that can't be removed. I mean, it's what were you going to say?
As Lucy would say, I love you, but listen for a minute. Okay. How was the service performed after she said, yes, I will marry you?
Well, we had to wait until she left the hospital. When she left the hospital, she still had a half a dozen surgeries that she needed. Her eye was still messed up. Her throat was still messed up. So all I wanted her to do was to get well enough to walk down the aisle to marry me. And then we continued along with all of the procedures. She was in the hospital for 9 months, but the surgeries continued for another 5 or 6 months after that. She had in-home therapy and all kinds of stuff.
Well, you know,
CJ only had a certain amount of time to get the point across in the film, which he did beautifully, but there is so much more to the story that's not necessary. The general public gets the idea. I didn't make this film to show off my relationship with Lucille Ball.
You didn't make it at all.
Let me make this point, John. It's very important. I didn't make this film to plug my show. I made this film, and CJ knew this going in. You could ask him because he had to twist my arm. I didn't think anybody would care. I made this film to show people that if they get aggressive and angry and become a bastard at times, you can emerge victoriously dealing with the healthcare system in this country. That's why I made the film. And that's what he shows in this film. That's what I want people going away from when they see this film. And he did it beautifully, but there's a lot more to the story that he didn't have time for. That's my point. Now you may speak on your own show. Go ahead.
Well, to me, one of the sweetest lines in the whole documentary is from an actor whose name I cannot remember, who said, you know, when people get married, it's for better or worse or till death do us part. But Stu did that before they were married. It's such a beautiful line. And then obviously, and I say it in my review, I mean, not only is this a magnificent love story, Stu, it's become a monumental public service. Listen, I have a friend who just got prostate cancer. You know what his medicine costs every month?
Yeah.
$3,000 a month for some little pills.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just criminal what's going on. So this film has become a monster public service. So now I want to talk to CJ a minute. CJ, I said that I felt Stu's show should have a subtitle because, you know, it is a love story. It's a story of a love for a man for a woman, and he marries her to save her life. And in saving her life, it becomes more than a love story. It becomes this magnificent public service documentary. So that's why I did not like the title, just Stu's Show. There should have been something else, because in the promo, what you're showing, or what the promoter or whoever's doing, they're showing nothing but celebrities. And I thought that's the worst part of the promo. That should have all been replaced by shots of Stu marrying her, of Stu fighting the medical profession, and then letting us know at the end, this is a public service film about how to defeat the corrupt for-profit medical system in this country. So do you have any words to defend the critique of the promo, which you did not make?
I absolutely did make it. And
oh my God.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. No, this is fascinating. This is what no one ever talks about, the process of creating these marketing things, and it's such an important part of doing all this. And you're right. What you'll see, the old movie is called Perfect Bid, The Contestant Who Knew Too Much. So you like that one.
I love it. I love it because it says something about what it's about.
Of course.
But one called Stu's Show doesn't say anything about what it's about.
Right, but sort of the way that I think that, I mean, we cut one trailer early on in the very beginning that was equal weight. The first, 45 seconds was Lucy. It was very similar to what we had in the one you saw. And the second half really did go into what you were talking about and had Stu ranting and raving about going and getting a gun. And it was very confusing for people in a minute and a half to get this story to have the effect that you're saying that it has on people. You really, unfortunately, need to have the 95 minutes of really, getting used to Stu, seeing his relationship with Lucy, how it affected him when she passed, and then seeing the situation arise again, where he's never going to let this happen again. This heartache he sort of went through with Lucy.
Well, there's sort of ways, CJ, you could have done it. Listen, but the overall result, the finished product, is magnificent. But if you were going to do it, you could have taken the camera onto the street. You could have found couples that loved one another and asked, hey, if he was going to die, would you marry him to save his life? And then you could get the answers. Or you, as the director, could have gone on camera and looked at us and said, listen, if you loved a woman or a man, and the only way you could save their life was to marry them, would you do it? And then you'd say, well, this is a story about a man who did. I mean, then that problem solved. And then you come back on and you tell us. And the reason he did it is he had to take on the medical profession. And then you could have a couple of horror stories about how goddamn awful the health system is in this country, especially compared to Canada. Anyway, but that's not it. You have a magnificent, magnificent film.
Thank you. And I really like those trailers, that, like you're saying, the sort of Hitchcock trailers where it's sort of its own sort of companion piece to the film. I do really like those. The tricky thing is just like the audiences now are so fickle, and the distributors themselves. Like it sounds defensive, but I literally want to do exactly what you're saying, but it will not sell the movie. Unfortunately, I have to find a way to put my art into the commercial digestion and tastes of today for the buyers to make sure that Stu's story even gets out there. So there's some, like you're saying, that's an interesting angle, but distributors didn't like the first trailer that I had too much of the actual story. So when I came up with the idea of cutting the trailer sort of like how they would do a sitcom trailer, where it's like Stu and his wacky cast of characters on the Stu show, that was the only way I could find that would appease the people.
CJ, you know what you would have to do? You would have to be as lucky as Stu. Mm-hmm. Stu found a CJ to make this magnificent movie, and he gave you carte blanche. You should have been lucky enough to find a better distributor who would give you Citizen Kane carte blanche to go out and make the promo that you could have made brilliantly. But in spite of the problems, it is unbelievably the third best documentary I have ever seen about anybody in show business. Now I'm looking forward to watching Perfect Bid over your shoulder, because I'm fascinated, first of all, by the excellence of this documentary. And Stu has also told me that is fabulous, and I would watch it. So now that you're not a hockey player, what do your parents think of what wonderful things you have done?
I'm an only child, so my mother, I could have, drawn a stick figure on a napkin and she would have put on a parade. To your point, the hockey thing was my dad and my dream for very many years, and he had a family business fixing RVs that he basically did everything in, and we weren't poor necessarily or anything by any means, but any extra money they had went into goalie gear and sticks and going to tournaments and this and that. So once you get one step away from making it, and then you have to have the conversation with your father as a 16 or 17-year-old that you're leaving this, that's extremely difficult and was confusing for everybody. And then luckily, it's the film business. It takes, almost a decade to get to anywhere where it looks like you're doing something. But they're very supportive. They've never, it was just confusing at first because like you're very close to making the NHL, and then I just abandoned it to go do some wacky business. That,
Well, listen, you may be close to winning an Academy Award next, for making a feature film. I don't know what kind of awards they give for documentaries, but if there are awards for documentaries, you are certainly up for one. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if you would win it. And are you a little bit, it's only been out a few days and it's a monster hit already. Does that not please you?
It definitely does, because to your point, what you're saying about distributors and stuff like that, it's not necessarily the distributors, it's the Netflixes, it's the Amazons, it's the Voodoos, it's these people in suits that are trying to appease these people that watch TikTok videos that are 6 seconds at a time, So it's I lost my train of thought, but
well, you know what? Because I'll tell you something. I have done by far the most definitive documentary on the murder of John Kennedy and Jim Garrison's solved and sabotaged case. I am the only person on earth he told this story to, even though he had sold his book to Oliver Stone to make the film. I was the only one he told the story to, and it is brilliant. Netflix wouldn't even look at it. Right. And I don't know distributors or anything like that. So how on earth did you get Perfect Bid and now Stu's on these wonderful outlets?
They really earn it. And I guess that's sort of what I was starting to get into, is that they called this project too niche. And it's like, we got Lucille Ball and you got Aaron Sorkin making, So and that's part of the idea with the trailer. It's like we have to unfortunately trick these people into like digesting this beautiful story, because when we show them, it's a biting expose on the medical industry. All these streaming companies are probably getting money from these companies as well, and don't necessarily want this.
You remind me a little bit, your enthusiasm for what it is that you're doing, of the young man from Europe who shot Searching for Sugar Man on his iPhone. Mm-hmm. And it ended up winning an Academy Award. Story is everything.
Characters are your greatest special effect. Like, you can have Marvel movies and all these things, but there's nothing better than a close-up of Sterling Hayden. That does.
You are absolutely and totally right about that. Okay. Oh my God. I am so proud of you, Stu. And I'm so...
Don't be proud of me. You be proud of C.J. Wallace. This is all his doing.
Well, I know, but you were the subject of the story, and he wouldn't have found you if you weren't excellent at what you do in preserving and archiving classic television. The only one on the planet doing it from the 50s to the 70s. And the love story is so moving. And where do you see a love story anymore in America? They don't exist anymore. Romance doesn't exist anymore. Sending flowers that doesn't exist anymore.
Can I tell you something that Janine's neuropsychiatrist told me when we finally got her into the right facility? Yes. I did a lot of research to get her into Northridge Hospital, and that was the first time I could take a deep breath and say, thank God there's going to be a happy ending here. Her neuropsychiatrist, I had to spend 2 or 3 hours with her on day one, giving her Janine's life story, because her brain was a jumbled mess. It was all there, but it was like a jigsaw puzzle that had to be put back together again. So when we finished this enormous session, when I told her about her family and my family and what our interests were and all of this stuff, and she took copious notes, she was a wonderful doctor. She said, I have to tell you something. She said, over 50% of significant others or spouses can't handle an emergency medical system like this, be it a stroke or a brain aneurysm, and there's a big difference, or cancer or dementia, some debilitating disease that's going to alter their lives together. Over 50% of the significant others walk away. I'm done. Family, handle it. She said to me, you, on the other hand, not only didn't walk away, you married her. it's, you just go into that mode, John, when you care deeply enough for somebody and you don't want to let her slip away. And believe me, I waited 51 years to find the right person, somebody who understood my ranting and raving, somebody who loved the same things as me. How many women do you know that love the Three Stooges, for God's sake? This is the guy, I finally, after all these years and a bad divorce, find the person that I am most compatible with and want to spend the rest of my life with. And she's going to be taken away from me? Well, fuck you. That's not going to happen. So, but the point I'm trying to make here is that 50% of the people can't handle it. And you just go into that mode. If you care about somebody enough, it's really second nature. What I wasn't aware of was the bullshit I had to go through to get her well. And that's what CJ portrays so brilliantly in this film. And I'm indebted to him for getting the word out that you can fight the system. But you really have to fight. That's the point.
You're 1 in a million. And I've met number 2 in a million. A woman who was married to a very successful attorney and fathered 5 children. One of the babies died young. He was like 51 or 52 and he got cancer, but cancer didn't kill him right away. He sort of disintegrated. She slept next to him in a chair for 7 months and nursed and fed him till he died.
Yeah, I don't know if I could have had the strength to do that. By the way, I want everybody to know out there, I've had several emails since I started doing interviews for the film. Would you be my health advocate? I am officially retired from that industry. That's it.
So anyway, I cannot thank you enough for who you are and what you do for me and now what you're doing for America by letting CJ make this wonderful documentary about you. And CJ, what is your plan for your next film? Or do you have a plan?
Oh,
okay, come on. What is it?
Well, see, that's the thing. When you self-produce these movies, we have 3 more that are, and not to belittle Stu, like we're just like this, machine.
He's got 3 more films. It's like Stu's out of it. I'm working on the next thing.
Yeah, I mean, we got 3 more movies during COVID. When there's only 2 people on the crew, you can stand 10 feet back and you can zoom in these lenses. Like we were able to work. There was, we could do these things safely. So we have 3 more projects coming out before the end of the year, we'll. Hopefully you'll like those and we'll be able to come back because this is very cool. I love all the old roasts and it's definitely been a treat that you complimented the film and said all that, John. It's very cool.
Well, I must tell you, I think you will go further in your career than Sterling Hayden did in his. And you may end up being the Stanley Kubrick of documentary filmmakers. I cannot thank you enough.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
That you're a joy to meet. And Stu, I absolutely love you. You are a treasure. Thank you so much for being here. And oh my gosh, this show is a treasure for me. It's not kind of a thank you, Stu. I can never say enough thank yous for what you have done for me and for Sarita. So God bless.
Thank you. You're a great guest when you do my show too, John. I always look forward to you driving up here all the way from Vegas. The man drives 5.5 hours to do my show. Can you believe that?
You're the only one for whom I would do that, quite honestly.
You wouldn't do it if CJ started a podcast.
Okay. Thank you all. Oh my goodness. Thank you all for watching. We will see you again in another 2 weeks with another Talking Movies. Maybe not as good as this one, but it'll be okay. See you then, and good luck and God bless.